I think we have to make a distinction between like a character like Solomon and his literary equivalent, which Faust.
Yeah,
is
definitely.
They were incredibly wise, and they were incredibly knowledgeable, and they sought a kind of knowledge or a kind of, I say, pseudognosis, because of they thought there was something beyond, right? So I think that that's really an important thing. We have to, when we talk about the Gnostics, we have to be careful what we say, because they're not actually Gnostics. They do not know. They lie and they claim to know. They don't know truth, they know falsehood. I mean, St. Maximus the Confessor in the Philokalia often refers to the one who knows, the saint, as Gnostic, which would throw us a little bit.
Right.
But
yeah.
he means a sage, somebody who actually really does know. Well, let's talk about Solomon.
Okay.
Solomon is an extremely complicated figure.
And I know you're working on a lot of Solomon's materials right now, and maybe a book is forthcoming.
Yes, hopefully one day, and God willing, everyone pray that I live long enough to do it with my slow writing skills. That being said, I think there's two really, really dangerous places to be. Being ignorant and foolish, because then you'll fall for any con man or huckster that comes along.
So we have that on one
hand. And then being really, really, really wise and really, really, really smart. Because what happens, and I think in the case of Solomon was so wise. Our teaching is sort of questionable, but either him or Adam were the wisest men to ever live. Right? So let's say, for sake of example, it's Solomon. He arrogantly believed that he was beyond the rules of mortal men.
Right.
He was up there. He knew things in a real way.
He's above the law.
He's above the law because he sees, and he was as close to that as anybody has ever been. And then, of course, in his weakness, the reason why he fell into whatever he fell into, it's questions, but he certainly fell into idolatry, which, if you think about it, is the worst, like the worst sin you can commit, because that's giving credence to a power other than God, right? So it's the opposite of an icon. Now, historically, the reason was probably political. He had a lot of wives, but he had an Egyptian wife, and he let her build a temple near Jerusalem, and he probably in his arrogance at that point thought,
it'll be fine.
I'm King Solomon.
Yeah.
What does it matter? But it did matter, and it resulted in a fall. Now, the church teaches that he repented of it, but we talk a lot more about King David than we do about King Solomon, because right there at the end, he inadvertently or foolishly, it says, in the canon of St. Andrew of Crete, the lover of wisdom became a lover of harlots.
Right.
And that's a danger for all of us.
Yeah. Well, even in Solomon's own writing at the end of Ecclesiastes, he's essentially saying the bottom line is this: fear God and follow his commandments.
Yes.
He starts off Ecclesiastes with, vanity of vanities, everything is vanity, all is vanity.
So
and then by the
preacher.
end, so saith the preacher. And then by the end, he's saying, fear God and follow his commandments.
Right. Which he, in that occasion, failed to do.
Right.
So if you fall, most of us are between those two extremes. But we have to realize that if the great King Solomon, the builder of the first temple of the Lord, the greatest king of Israel, if he was tempted by these things, how easily are we tempted? This is a motif that is very much present in our culture, in Western culture. I don't know about other cultures. We have the character of Faust.
Sure.
Faust had made this bargain with Mephistopheles, and he could do anything. He was given anywhere. He could go anywhere, could have anything, but he could not walk into a church. He could not pray to God. He could not have any kind of illicit sexual relation. Had to be illicit.
Right.
And he winds up, if you read the story, it's brilliant. At the end, he's acting like a fool.
Yeah.
He's going in passing gas in front of the Pope and all these various other things. Because once you eliminate goodness, the only thing left is foolishness.
Yeah.
But we see that tragic character throughout even modern literature. I mean, Anakin Skywalker, Darth Vader. This is somebody who thought he was going to be all powerful,
right,
and he was willing to destroy everything so that he would rule. And then he wound up becoming a slave to somebody more powerful.
You're talking about putting on the armor of God, right? Which St. Paul is actually quoting from, I believe, the Wisdom of Solomon.
Absolutely.
So this is the armor of God. We need God in this fallen world.
And as Orthodox Christians, we have to avoid superstition. We have to avoid using the church in a superstitious way. I was reading a book about magic in Byzantium. People used to like scrape the paint off of icons and put it in a chalice and drink from it, and they thought that would give them visions or whatever. So we're not immune at all to this kind of thinking.
Sure.
People saw, they see a bird in the wrong place and they think, oh, this is a sign from God. Everything's a sign from God. That's true. But we are not competent to read the signs for God unless we do the work that the Holy Fathers say. Then we can discern the times and the seasons. But as long as we're doing it in a passionate way, in a fallen way, every time we do that, we're just being led astray by Satan.
Amen.